All right, so I would like to welcome you all out to this presentation on troubleshooting web performance issues. My name is Jeff Love. Just to tell you a little bit about me, I'm the president of CyberLancers, which is a software development service company located both in Colorado and Florida. I've been working professionally with .NET since version 1.0, working on both software and web applications. One of the things I love to do is find and troubleshoot performance issues. To me, it's like being a detective. I get an unknown problem. I've got my tools that I use to go and try to figure out the problem, and then being able to go and see measurable results after fixing it. And I've got on here my LinkedIn, website, GitHub, email, all sorts of different ways for you to be able to contact me. So why do we care about performance? Because our customers do, obviously. As page times go up, revenue and visitors go down. Amazon.com discovered that a slowdown of 1 second could cost them $1.6 billion a year. Bing discovered that a 2-second delay led to 4.3% revenue loss per visitor. As we try to improve performance, we do our best in development to make the site fast. We obviously go and try to do our very best. We've got performance monitors that we run locally. We go and, as we're doing our testing, we want to make sure that the site's working the best. But unfortunately, that isn't always the case. As we try to improve performance, we do our best in development to make the site fast, but that isn't always the case when we deploy to production. So why do issues that we don't see during development and testing happen in production? Well, there's a few different reasons why they don't show themselves. One of the first is differences in hardware. When your website goes to production, you have all sorts of differences in hardware. One of them might be routers, load balancers, and just outdated servers. Speaking of routers, it reminds me of a problem that I had for an e-commerce client that I worked for. We had worked so hard to get the site released in time for Black Friday. We did all of our testing, we did all of our troubleshooting, and we got the site launched about 3 weeks before Black Friday. We went and everything was working great. We got it in production, no problems. Then along comes Black Friday. We had a war room set up. We had monitors showing how many active visitors we had on the website. And we're all cheering as we see that number going up larger, more and more. Then once we start getting close to 1,000, all of a sudden we see it plateau, and then the phones start ringing. And what we found is that we were having customers who could no longer access the website, or the website was timing out. So instantly we go into crisis mode, trying to use all of our tools, all of our different things at our hands to try to figure out why was the site going down and why wasn't it responding. Fortunately, it turned out that it was nothing that we did. It was in fact a bad router by the web hosting company, to where they had gone and put a limitation to the number of users that they were able to have come through in order to prevent cyber attacks. So we had to tell them that no, this was not in fact a cyber attack. It was actually good that we were having a lot of customers coming, and they were able to go remove the limitation, and our site performed flawlessly. Some other issues that you might face are database issues. One of the main reasons why you have issues in production that you don't have in development is that there's just in fact more data in production than you have locally. Many databases that you're working with in production might be gigabytes or hundreds of gigabytes in size that you're just not able to bring locally. And once you go and start putting that into production, that larger amount of data goes and starts resulting in performance issues. Another could be missing data. You might have forgot to go and run a script once you did your latest deployment, and something might be missing, an index might be missing that you had added, that all of a sudden results in a performance issue in production. Lastly, edge cases. There just might be data that you don't expect that is in production that's not locally, that goes and causes some sort of an issue. Another reason is usage differences. You're going to have an increased number of users. As much as we try testing and we try load testing locally, we just can't fully simulate the number of concurrent users that especially a busy site might be able to receive. Another reason is the user doesn't use the app as we intended. Usually we come up with our happy path. This is how a website should be used. They're going to start at this page, they're going to click this button, this next thing's going to happen, and we're going to be happy. Unfortunately, users don't work the way that we usually want them to. They're going to go in, they're going to start clicking things that we don't expect them to click, they're going to hit the back button, they're going to do all sorts of different things that we don't expect that might lead to problems that we just didn't discover in development. Another is perception. Many times I find that perception is the issue. What seems fast to us isn't fast to someone else. In development, we might go and see items that are coming across 2-3 seconds and feel, hey, you know what? That's pretty darn fast to me. We might go and feel that, you know what, that's just fine. But unfortunately, once it gets into production, our users have different ideas. What we might think is fast at 2 to 3 seconds, they're expecting at less than 1 second. So now that we know we have a problem, how do we discover where the problem is? Well, the first way is we can ask someone where the problem is. Unfortunately, I find that this isn't always as straightforward as it seems. I had a performance issue a few months ago where we had just deployed something out to production, and the user started complaining that the site wasn't performing as quickly as they wanted it to. I asked the client, well, where exactly is the problem? And the common response I usually get is, well, you know what, I don't know. So next, you can try browsing the site yourself to see if you can find any issues. So you can start going on to production, navigating around the website, seeing if you find anything that might be not performing as you expected it to. You could also use monitoring tools. One of the monitoring tools that I've started to use recently that I've found to be helpful is a tool called New Relic. You also have SolarWind App Optics, Logic Monitor, or other monitoring tools that sit on IIS or your web server that allow you to go and get more in-depth information as to how your website is performing. I took here some screenshots from a website that we are monitoring using New Relic. And one of the things I like is that on here, you're able to go and see a little history of how your application is performing, along with the recent transactions that have taken place and how long the app server time is. So you can see there in the bottom left under transactions, we've got a few transactions that are showing there, and this one, the get appointments for schedulers, going at 213 milliseconds on average. Then we're able to go and to drill into that transaction, and we can get a breakdown of exactly why it's going so slow. So in here, we're able to break it down, see how long different SQL queries are taking, how long different other database queries are taking, how long each method is taking. And from here, we're able to get a little bit of a better understanding of exactly where the problem is occurring. Another way that we just can discover issues is using a web crawler. Some of the web crawlers that are out there are Sitebull, Moz, Google Search Console. Unfortunately, I find that using a web crawler isn't always the best solution. It'll work if you need to go through a large number of pages in a short amount of time. You can go and fire off the crawler at your home page, and it'll go and index through all of your pages. And many of these will tell you how quickly the page responded, which might be fine if your performance issue is a surface level, such as a page just is taking too long to initially load up. But if the performance issue is happening because of some JavaScript that's running on your page or some other sort of functionality, most of these web crawlers, unfortunately, can't go and meet that. So let's go ahead and come over here to a demo. Fortunately, that did not work the way I expected it to. All right, so on here, I'm going to fire up my demo website that I created. So this is being built using ASP.NET Core, which should be a fairly quick application. So while it's loading, so in here is the home page for my application, and I run in this demo I run a resort called the Montana Resort, and we just received approval prior to the Super Bowl to be able to have our own online sports betting. So we had about a couple of days to get this ready, a lot of pressure, so we went and we cranked out this sports book. So we're on our test site right now. We've got this quick little sports book that goes and lets us place bets on Kansas City or San Francisco and displays the last 10 bets. So everything right here is looking good in test. I can go and add some bets here. Performs fairly quickly. I don't see any kind of issues. So we're just going to go ahead and exit out of here. So now let's go ahead and change it over to use production. And we'll go and we'll start it up again. So I've set up the production database to be a larger database. It has in there roughly 150 to 100,000 bets that took place. That should be able to give us a pretty good understanding of if this is going to work well in production or not.
Hey, Jeff, I don't see anything right now.
Do you not see the...
I see your island.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. Actually, wasn't sure if it was just me.
Thank you. For some reason it must have been... You got it now?
Yeah,
I can
Okay.
see life is beautiful. Can we go there?
Yep. So, after that little technical hiccup, we are back, and now we are in production. So you should have seen, if it was working correctly, that everything was working great. So now we're going to go back to our sports book, and it looks like we're getting the spinning indicator here. For some reason now, once we've switched over to production, this is taking quite a long time. We're just spinning here, waiting for, okay, finally it stopped spinning. We got everything that we needed to. Let's see if we go in and place a bet. You know what, that was instantly happening, and now we're spinning again. So obviously something that was working in test is not working in production. So I'll just close out of here rather than us waiting. So why is this happening to us now? Are you still able to see? Do you see where it says demo, or do you see two slides?
I see demo.
Okay, good. So in here, I've got some of the tools that we can go to try to figure out where our web performance issues are. For this one, we just went to the site and tested around and found that we had an issue. So we have found the problem. Now the next question is, why is it occurring? One of the things we have to figure out is this a problem on the front end or on the back end, because we're going to approach them two completely different ways. If the problem's on the front end, we have a number of tools that we can try to use that will help us determine how we can speed up the site and determine where some of the problems are. First one is Google Lighthouse, which is a tool that has come out in the last couple of years from Google that's now part of the developer tools that will audit your website and tell you where there might be slowdowns. Another is Chrome Dev Tools. This is built into the Chrome browser, and you're able to get all sorts of different information on your website to help you debug and try to find performance issues. Another is YSlow and GTmetrix. These two are similar to the old Google Performance Monitor and the Google Lighthouse, and they show you just some additional ways in which your site might be underperforming on the front end. Now, if the problem's happening on the back end, there's some different ways we can go about it. One is we can add tracing and logging into the website or into our application, setting up stopwatch timers in there and logging the information to try and figure out how long certain methods are taking or maybe different database queries. Another piece that's built into Visual Studio is the Visual Studio Performance Profiler. This is a tool that you can go and use that will let you run your application and see how long it takes and help point you to some trouble spots. Another is using a profiling tool like JetBrains DotTrace or Redgate Ants Performance Profiler. These are two commercial tools out there that are similar to the Visual Studio Performance Profiler, but they can provide additional information. Redgate is helpful in that it'll let you go and drill down into database queries and let you go and see exactly how long a query is taking as part of your different method in order to determine if it's the query or if it's something other than the query that's causing problems. And JetBrains DotTrace is a tool that I've been using for a while prior to the Performance Profiler being included in Visual Studio that allows you to drill down. And one of the things I like about it is that it'll sometimes give you more information as it's able to provide information on Microsoft libraries and some of the different methods once you get into there that could help you try to figure out problems. And I found it to be helpful, especially when I'm trying to eke out as much performance as I can with entity frameworks. I find that a lot of times it'll go and give me some information as to what's happening that I might not find anywhere else. So we'll now go back to our demo and we will try to figure out why this problem is happening. So back in our demo, and you guys can see my Visual Studio screen again, right?
Yep.
All right.
Sure do.
So we'll launch this back up in production. So this time I want to go and I'm going to open up my Google Developer Tools. And then we'll navigate over to the Sportsbook. One of the tools I really like to use in here is this Network tab. In Network, you're able to go and see how long different items are taking, and especially when you have the XHR, this is going to show you your web API calls that are being made, and it'll let you determine how long it's taking for different web API calls to happen. And you're also able to get into here and see more information, like what the response is, what information you're sending over to it. So I find this tab to be pretty helpful. Like I had mentioned before, you now have this Google Lighthouse. And we get to that by going into the audits. And the one here that's going to matter to us is this performance. So from here, we can just select the performance. It's going to run this as a mobile device. And one of the things that it'll also do is slow down your site in order to better simulate what it would be like to run your page on a slower device. And this will really help you kind of find problems easier rather than if you're on the lightning fast internet. So we're going to generate this report, and we're just going to kind of see what it shows is happening. So it'll go and it'll run through. And it's getting us a score of 2. So obviously not too good. We're seeing that the time that it takes to even get to the first item showing is about 15 seconds. Our speed index is at a 20. So obviously we're seeing that there's a problem here. If we're going back into the network tab, so we see that it just finished up. And there's 2 methods that are taking place here. There's this get latest, and we expand out the time. Get latest is taking about 874 milliseconds. Then this get best, wow, that's taking 27 seconds. So that seems to be where our problem is. And so on our page, the get latest is what's driving here to tell us how much money's been placed and what the current odds are. And then this getting the bets is getting us these last 10 bets here. So it's looking like we've got a problem there. So we'll close out of here. And we're going to this time run the Visual Studio Performance Profiler. And you get to it by going into the debug, and then you can select Performance Profiler. In here, you'll have a number of options. The most useful here is going to be CPU usage. This is going to show us where most of the time is happening when executing the code, and it's going to help us find the bottlenecks. So I've got it already set up to run through my website. So we'll start it. It's going to start the website up for me. Now, one of the things with any of these performance tools that you run, these profilers, is that because they're setting up their own hooks into IIS or IIS Express, a lot of times the site's going to go and perform slower than it normally would. So don't always see that, yeah, the performance is really bad and automatically figure that there's a problem. Everything's going to run slowly when you're running these performance tools. So we'll go back into the sports book. We'll let it run. And it's doing its thing. Like I said, it's going to go slower because we've got the profiling going on. And it's finished. So now we can close out. We'll close out of, shut down the IIS Express, and now we'll stop collecting the data. Now it's collecting all that information and generating a report for us. In here, it's going to show what the CPU usage of all the processors were. But then down here, it'll start showing us where most of the time was spent. And so we can see that, yes, most of the time was spent in this get bets part of our API controller. So we can click to select to get more information about it. And what it'll do is it'll start breaking it out. And in the current function, we can see that around 74% of the time was spent in this method. And if we look down, we see, it was able to go and get the information fairly quickly. But then we're starting to loop through here because we want to be able to get the name. The bets just has what the bet was, but we have another database table. I'll show you the database tables right here. In the bets, it's just bet information, and then we have teams. And if we look in here, teams is only going to be our 2 teams. It's going to be Kansas City and San Francisco. So we only have 2 records there. But as we're going through trying to get the team name, that's where all of our issues are happening. So if we actually go and we look into this get team name, we're hitting the database, we're getting the first record out of the teams table that goes and matches the ID that we pass it, and we return that back. So nothing special there, but the problem here is that it's one of your N+1 issues that could happen. We're going and we're getting the data out of the database, we're looping through, and for each of these, it looks like we have 15,000 records that it's going through. Each of these records that it's going through, it is once again opening a connection up to the database and getting that team name coming back. So it's going through and having all of that overhead of opening up the database close to 16,000 times. So we know that that is a problem. I'm going to go ahead and show you in here the .trace, just to show you a different alternative and a different way of viewing the data than the performance profiler. So that comes up. There's a few different ways that you can set this up to run. You can do a sample, which will tell you how much of call time. Tracing tells you the call numbers. Line by line will go and show you, similar to the Microsoft performance, just how much time is each line item is being executed. And then you have timeline, which gives you a real granular approach to if you really want to start digging in and isolate to only your to public methods or to Microsoft APIs or different APIs. There's all sorts of different ways you can filter your data if you do it by timeline. But we're going to go ahead and run it line by line. And one of the things I wanted to show you too in here is that since our get_bets is a web API call, we don't have to go and run the website completely over again in order to retest this. We can just limit it to that get_bets API call, since that's where our problem is going to be. So we're just going to go and set this to the get_bets, since it's a simple get. This will let us run through as it's running in the background. Like I said, one of the problems with these is that they run quite a bit slower than if you're handling it normally. And unfortunately, there is not a way to go and end it early to cut time here.
Is there a way that you can show results so that the people in the meeting watching you don't have to wait for this? Kind of like skip a waiting step?
Possibly. So we've got all of our data back. So now in here we can go and say get snapshot and wait. So this is going to go and take it. And it's going through all of the data that it's collected and generating a report, just like the Microsoft one did. And in here it goes and it shows us all of our threads. Usually I find that because this is a multi-threaded application, most of these threads are just going to be overhead and other items that we're not concerned with. Usually our problem is going to be the very top thread. So as we start digging through it, we're going to see all of the different methods that get called as we dig down in order to actually process this web API call. Now this is one area where the Microsoft one works a little bit better, is a lot of times you don't care about all of this extra information here. And so it provides a nice clean insight, whereas this has a lot more overhead. But in here we can go and we're back to our get bets. We can see that it took 53 milliseconds to run here, or 53,000 milliseconds, sorry. And this get team name, it's making 30,000 calls to it. And took the majority of the time, which was the 50,000. So we can see here in our view that it's looping through here. And yeah, here's our issue, the same one where the Microsoft found. So we will go ahead and kill this off. All right, let's get back to our slideshow here. So here's just another chart with some of the different tools, what they do, and how you can find them. So now it is time to get started fixing these issues that we've found. So the first thing we want to do is start going through the list of issues that we've identified. Like I showed when we were doing the demonstration, database issues can be caused by bad SQL queries, our N+1 issue in large data sets. Front-end issues can be caused by bad JavaScript, third-party libraries, large images, large pages, CSS issues. There's a number of different ways that our front end can hurt us. But some problems we just can't fix locally, and we need to do trial and error with production. We can do this by logging and stopwatch commands to time specific areas of code to try to figure out where the problem is. We can also use some logging and tracing frameworks to help pinpoint areas. One of the caveats is you do not want to use this for long periods of time in production. Like I showed with the performance monitoring tools, as you're adding in these tracing items, it's a lot of more overhead that you're adding to your application, and instead of helping, many times you could hurt if you leave these things on when you're going into production. I had an issue a few weeks ago where we had an application that was in production that, as we ran it locally, we didn't seem to have any issues, but once it was in production, all of a sudden the application took 2 to 3 minutes to launch. So trying to figure this out, we were able to look at some of the existing logs that we had and narrow it down. And then since we couldn't duplicate the issue locally and the database itself was 50 gigabytes, we couldn't bring down the database. So the only thing that we were able to do was to add some different stopwatch commands around different parts of the code, put it up into production at a time when no one else was using the application, and take a look at the logs to identify exactly where the issue was happening. And by doing some trial and error, putting in different logging areas, finally able to narrow down the problem and be able to fix it. So let's do another demo. So in here, we are going to go ahead and start fixing our website. So let's start by going back to our website just to see the issue happening. So in here, we see that the problem's still happening with our get bets. So we'll just go ahead and stop right there. All right. So as when we had taken a look at it before, we saw that the problem actually happened in here. As we're going and we're getting the bets, like we can see, we're looping through and we're getting the team name. So that's probably not the best way to go about this. So instead, what we want to do is we want to be able to get the team name as part of this get bets. So if we head into this get bets, what we want to be able to do is in here, since it's a foreign key relationship, we can just choose to include the teams here. And so what this is going to do is we'll be able to bring back the teams, and then in our controller, you know what we don't need to do? We don't need to retrieve them anymore because we'll already have them. So in here we can go and do our team name is going to be the bet.team name. So now we shouldn't have to loop through there anymore. So let's go ahead and let's see if that works. So we're bringing up the website again. I'm going to go and show my developer tools. Let's go back into our sports book. We failed here. So it's because we don't have teams. It's because we're calling a team in here. So if we come in, let's go and fix that, and let's start it up again. Okay, we got it back. Let's go into our sports book. And there we go. And we can see that, you know, at this time it came up in 3 seconds. So much faster than the 25, 26 seconds that it was taking earlier. And if we go and we run, you know, things are popping up a lot faster. We're not going and locking up the site for long periods of time. So it looks like we've gone and we've fixed that issue. But one of the things I'm noticing here, let's go and let's run this Lighthouse report again. So we'll run through here. So we had previously a score of 2. What are we going to get now? Hopefully we've gone up a bit. Oh, wow, we're at a 0 now. That's one of the things with Lighthouse is sometimes your scores, even though you fix issues, a lot of times these scores kind of jump around a bit. But one of the things I wanted to point out in here is as I was kind of going through this, I noticed that we're getting this enable text compression and that we could save 15.5 seconds right there. So if I take a look, it's saying that this get bets, it's 3 megabytes in size and that we could save it. We could save if we compressed it. But my thought is, you know, if we're only getting the last 10, why is our size 3 megabytes? So if we take a look at our network, yeah, we can see right here, the size of it is 1.5 megabytes. So we're bringing back, the get latest was only 123 bytes. So the size seems to be quite large as to the data set that we're getting back. So take a look at what's happening there. So if we look in this get bets, you know, it looks like we're getting all the bets and we're looping through everything, but I don't see where we're only returning back top 10. So that seems to be a problem since we're going, and on the JavaScript side, that's where we're doing our limitation. So let's try limiting this down here. So in order to save a little bit of time, I'll just go and take my fix. And I'll show you what I did here. So with this one, now what I'm doing is I need to also change this bets so that instead of returning back a list, we're going to return back a queryable. So what this is going to do is by returning back a queryable, it's going to not go and execute this immediately as when we had the to list. It'll return us back still where we can add to the query. And then we're going to be able to, in here, say, you know what, only take the first 10 that we find. So now we should only be returning back 10, looping through, getting our team name, and our data should be a lot less now. So I'm going to build that, and I saw that we had, because in this book info, we need to change that to a iQueryable as well. Build that, make sure we're okay. Looking good, so let's start it now. Let's get back up our developer tools again too. So the sites come up, we'll come into our sports book. Yeah, now getting our bets is a lot faster. It took less than a second, and we're only returning back 560 bytes instead of the 1.5 megabytes that we were getting. So just for fun, let's go and run that Lighthouse audit again. Let's see if we can beat a 0, or if we can even beat that 2 that we had now that we're turning back less data. Nope, now we're at a 3. So we are improving. But you can see in here, you know, there's obviously a lot more areas. It's still feeling that our site is fairly slow, which even though our application is returning, our little bets thing is returning back faster, there's still some more items on here that we could take a look at in the future, such as removing unused CSS, look at some of the render blocking resources, but that's out of the scope of this presentation that we're going to do today. But there is always room for improvement with performance. There's always something in there that you can go and fix. It's just a matter of how much time do you want to spend in taking care of the issues. So we'll go back to our presentation. So now we've figured everything. We've gone and we fixed the issue. What's next? Like I said before, our job is never done with making the site faster. The quest for a faster site will never be done. The question is, how fast do we need to make it? The answer is different for everyone. Some sites need sub 1 second responses, while others can be a bit slower. This is based on your customers. If you're working on a financial website or even an e-commerce website, many times you need to go and have that site as fast as you can possibly get. If it's just the home page for a local store, for a mom and pop store, your personal website where you're showing pictures of your dog, you might not need to have 1 second, and in fact, 5 to 10 seconds might be just fine for the people that you're displaying it to. It's all based on the type of customer that you have. But continue to find and fix the larger performance issues before tackling the smaller ones. Like we saw in there, the main issue that we had with our website was that get that was taking 15 to 20 seconds. That was more of an issue than some of the other items that we were seeing that Lighthouse showed of fixing CSS and some of the other on-page issues. But when troubleshooting web performance, eventually you'll come to a point where it's better to improve the hardware rather than the code. Some of these items are easy to fix, like the one that we showed, it took a few minutes in order to go and fix that problem. But as you start getting to the smaller issues, usually the time that it takes to fix those issues increases. Some of these issues, it might go and take 2 to 3 days of developer time or even more in order to fix an issue that is only going to save you a few milliseconds. Like I said before, depending on your customer, that might be what you need to do. But I found that many times it's just easier to throw hardware at it. If you're trying to go and eke out as much performance as you can get, and you're spending developer hours and you're decreasing the functionality of the website, sometimes that's where you need to start looking into load balancers and just adding more hardware or more memory to fix the problem. So going forward, how can we make our job easier? Always keep performance in mind when developing. Like I said at the very beginning, what might seem fast to you doesn't seem fast to others. So always keep in mind performance. When you're doing database queries, time out how long it's going to take you to run that database and multiply it by a factor in order to go and figure out just how long it's going to take when you add more data that it has to go and filter through. Try to have an environment as close to production as possible. If you can go and grab a backup of that database, the production database, and use it locally, that's great, because then you're going to know any issues that might happen once you get up into production. Another is to add logging to help troubleshoot issues that can be turned on with a config change. Be proactive, add in logging to help you figure out where some of these issues are going to be occurring that you can leave off, but be able to turn back on as needed in case a problem does occur. So thank you. I hope that you were able to learn something, discover something new. The code that I was demonstrating is available on my GitHub, and then feel free to contact me. I've left my email address up here if you want to contact me, or if you have any questions or issues related to website performance. I'd love to help you talk it out and help you figure out how you can make your sites faster. So thank you.
Good job, Jeff.